The Dane and Derek Show is an uncensored, unfiltered podcast. Content warnings can be found in the episode description. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to this side of the Outer Rim, where the Dane and Derek Show lives on the internet. I'm Derek, a fellow Jedi Knight, Padawan, Master, Outcast, Jedi Outcast. I don't know. I'm something with the Force. And with me this week is Dane.
Hi, I'm Dane, a writer, musician, podcaster, and you know what? I think I'm settling. I think I'm settling on former Jedi. I think I'm settling on former Jedi. That would be probably where I'd land.
Oh, nice! Like the guy that's voiced by Freddie Prinze Jr. in Rebels, Kanan, right?
Kanan Jarrus, yeah.
Yeah, great character. One of the best. One of the best.
Okay, we can't do this right. We can't do this right now. That's next week. We can't do this yet.
All right. Here's our icebreaker for this week. Droids with a question mark. Thoughts, opinions?
Droids stress me out. Because they might be slaves? Question mark. It's very unclear. And I really wish it wasn't.
Yeah. I mean, Solo, A Star Wars Story is really the only film to ever have any mention of what droids are to people.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a joke. It's used as a joke.
They turn it into a joke and it's bad. And I'm like, oh, that wasn't good. You know, Star Wars is full of a lot of problematic stuff, like by a lot, like, you know, lots of racist stereotypes, a lot of sexism. And like, sometimes I think that might have been the worst thing they've done. You know, and so like, on the one hand, like I love droids, like conceptually, like I love R2 and like Chopper and BB-8, like and like 3PO. Like I love the concept of as they serve in the stories, but as like a lore concept, I find it deeply troubling, and there are just like no answers for me. So here's hoping that changes someday. Droids?
I feel about the same way. I think here's how I look at droids, right? I'd never want to own one. I'd never want to create one, but I wouldn't mind chilling with one. I wouldn't mind, hanging out with one, having a pal that's a droid, you know?
Agreed.
I wouldn't mind that.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
You know, like I don't want to be a part of whatever capitalist institution creates droids, but I'm more than happy to help a droid get its freedom. Definitely, where I'm at. But that's not quite where we're talking about today. We're talking about the sequel trilogy today, the most recent Star Wars films in memory. And oh goodness, this is a lot to unpack.
It is a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go broadly, because this is like a flame war on the internet. So no matter which side you pick, you're gonna get crucified for this. So like, which side are you on? Just like, let's just do you like them or do you not like them? Like just broadly. And you can you can even be like mild dislike. You don't have to be like I hate them. Like you don't have to go all the way like everybody else thinks you do.
Okay, if liking them is above 50%, then I'm at 51%.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
I think I would say that I like 60, like I'm at like a 66%. I'm like 2/3 there. Because I have very good feelings about 2/3 of the movies. And then I don't really like the ninth one isn't good. But like execution wise, it is better than I think all three of the prequels. Like just as far as like film execution goes, so it's still not like it's not hard to sit through. Like genuinely sometimes like it like just the cringe in the sequel in the prequel trilogy is like it's literally hard to listen to these lines, and that never happens in Rise of Rise of Skywalker, right? Like,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, I guess we should talk about Rise of Skywalker. Let's talk about them in reverse, shall we? Uh,
that sounds like a good plan. Or maybe even
yeah.
I might even like jump back and forth and
Uh,
save
I
8 for
think if
the
we do them
middle.
by director.
That's fair. Yes.
You
Let's
know,
talk about the
9 is
J.J.
7 and then
Abrams.
8. Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's my take with 9, right? I watched it at the ArcLight Cinemas in Los Angeles, rest and rip, and the audience audibly groaned when Ray and Ben kissed because
Wow.
it was just kind of, in my opinion, unnecessary. And a lot of that film is unnecessary. A lot of that film redacts pretty much everything in Last Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that film kind of takes away a lot of Rey's agency and a lot of the agency of the other characters.
Totally.
You know,
Totally.
Rey is reduced to the product of birthright.
Yep. Which
Um,
sucks. So sucks.
Finn, yeah, Finn gets his entire storyline written out basically. Poe Dameron is reduced to nothing but a guy who complains, and Rose doesn't really exist in the movie
At all.
They add a bunch more characters who have very, very weird romantic ties to older men, and there's also just it's got a big problem with like time portrayal, like time's all over the place.
Very confusing.
You can tell that they tried to kill Chewie, but then they didn't. But then they couldn't kill Chewie because
They couldn't
whatever.
commit.
And
Yeah.
then of course, you know, like there's just a lot of like I don't know, like we didn't need Palpatine.
No, we really didn't. We
Like
really, really
we
didn't.
really didn't. And like it honest to God feels like salvage. And like I mean here's the thing, like I understand people worked really hard to make this movie because there was a lot of controversy after Last Jedi. And I understand that there was a lot of things riding on this movie being successful,
Mhm.
but holy crap, like I just don't know. Like this whole like the whole sequel trilogy, going back to Force Awakens now, like I just don't know what it was trying to say or do. And I feel like that's just a product of like there's so many voices in the room and so many people being so like feeling like I guess in a lot of ways like afraid to fail, you know.
Mhm.
And I feel kind of
Mhm.
bad for everyone that had to like work on it because it just feels like really rough. Like I can't
Yeah.
imagine having that much pressure to make something good and then to have it be so like lukewarm received. Like
Right.
I feel awful even tearing it apart right now, you know?
Yeah. And so here's I said this last week and I'm gonna say it again here. The prequel trilogy is a problem of is a problem of good ideas with garbage, fuck awful execution. The sequel trilogy, and in my opinion, by like I really don't think you can argue with me on this. Outside of episode 8, is a 9 in particular is a problem of mediocre ideas to no ideas with really good execution. Because technically speaking, these movies are well done. Like
Yeah.
Rise of Skywalker a little less so because they clearly tried to squeeze about 2 movies worth of something into a single, so then it gets choppy and that's just a thing. But there's nothing like technically wrong with it, right? Like the
Yeah.
acting is good. Like all of the actors, like there's no cringy like I will say this about Hayden Christensen. He's not actually a garbage actor. He's like if you've seen anything else he's ever like really done where like the writing was good and the directing was good, he's pretty good. He's not like the most amazing actor who's ever been by any stretch of the imagination, but he isn't like a nightmare actor. He had such garbage material to work with in the prequels. Like what was he supposed to do? That's not a problem in the sequel trilogy. So all the actors kind of get they don't suck, right?
Right.
And to some extent, I think that there is almost a science down to like movie making at this point. Like there are certain things that can just be done so consistently.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I don't begrudge anybody who worked on any of these films. They did some amazing stuff, right? Like so much like
Yeah.
I think they learned so much from the prequels in the sense of like the sequels brought back sets and going to location and like all kinds of amazing stuff. They did
Yeah.
great on that, right?
Every fight matters.
Yes,
every
they
time the
did it.
lightsaber gets pulled out, it matters.
Right, they learned so much, and they also like managed like something I love about actually Rise of Skywalker. I want to give it a few like points, like just a few big wins here, which is uh one, the fight between Kylo Ren and Rey on the ruins of the Death Star. That was fucking awesome. Like that
Yeah.
was great because like
Highlight.
there's so much tension and you're not even clear who is the good guy in this moment, and that's awesome. And like they managed to make the Force feel like powerful in a way that you couldn't manage in the original trilogy because of the limitations of technology, without it feeling so like beyond human. You know, like they gave everything weight, and then the fight ends and she heals him because she didn't want to kill him. And I was like, dope. Like this is all cool. Like this is all super cool. Like that's like there's some things that were like, and I was like, that's an amazing bit of execution. It's just so out of context and out of like place at this point that there's just it doesn't land. Right?
Exactly. Like that should have almost been the end of the movie.
Maybe. Yeah, probably. And here's the thing, like imagine this for a second. Imagine that Rise of Skywalker opened on that fight.
Yeah.
For a second.
Oh
that,
my goodness.
That like in the crawl that they just like basically set up like some like Rey and Kylo are looking for a MacGuffin, a Force MacGuffin because they need to. And it's such a continuation of the last battles in 8, right? Like where they're so close and they're like, I don't fucking want to do this. Like, why are we fighting? Like, why are we doing this? You know?
Yeah.
And like, it all like it. There's and again, there's like potential there, but all that potential, in my opinion, comes from 8 because it introduced interesting ideas, new ideas, right? And this kind of brings me to 7. I like 7 a lot. I think 7 is really well executed. I think it's really fun, and I think it's really clear as a story. It breaks zero ground, both in storytelling and in Star Wars storytelling, for that matter. Like zero ground. It's basically A New Hope again, right? With a few like slight twists on it. And on the one hand, like I'm very much of the mind, like I think that was the right move because there was so much hate for the prequels. That the first one kind of needed to remind everybody that you like Star Wars movies. You do. I promise.
Right. Yeah.
I promise you do.
Yeah.
And
that opening is so good.
Yeah, and I thought that's a great way to do it. That's great. And then 8 came out, and I thought it was going to take things in a different direction, and then they course corrected so hard back that it didn't make sense again. Like, and so here's my question: 8 is the big elephant in the room that we're dancing around right now. How do you feel about 8?
Yeah. So when 8 initially came out, I was not a fan. But as I thought about it and rewatched it and eventually watched 9, I came to realize that 8 really was the standout film because it took a lot of Star Wars isms and kind of like the original trilogy discarded them. Like the original trilogy did not have Star Wars isms in the way that the prequels and sequels do, or a lot of other Star Wars media. You know, there weren't a lot of, oh, that's a Star Wars moment in Last Jedi.
There were
many
fewer, yes.
Yeah, and I think that, because like my bigged critique of Last Jedi was that it's like really hard to follow the story because there's like, you know, a lot of issues with pacing, but I realize that that's just like an execution problem. The actual quality of what's there's some really interesting things that happen in that movie that I think, you know, it kind of answers a lot of those questions. Like it establishes some of my favorite things, right? Like that the Jedi and Sith are kind of like this old way of thinking, and that the Force can be something else. It establishes the unimportance of Rey's parents.
Oh, I love that.
It also like brings in a really cool thing that like we only see in the video games, which are Force bonds. And on top of that, like we have Luke Skywalker we have a lot of people think that like this like was the Luke Skywalker we didn't deserve, and that the one on Mandalorian was the one that we did deserve. But I feel like the Luke Skywalker that we get, like people forget that it's been like 40 years. Like he's tired.
We deserved both, honestly.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey,
Yeah, we
both can
deserved a
be
little bit of
true.
both.
Both can
Yeah,
be true. So
exactly.
so here's where I come down on 8. I adore 8. I really, really adore 8. Um, and here's my reasoning for it. I think it's a big flaw, and the reason the pacing falls apart is that they weren't exactly sure what to do with Finn. Um, and so they did this whole Canto Bite thing, the whole casino thing. Um, and that just didn't quite flow with the pacing exactly. But the interesting, it kind of messed up the pacing a bit. But the interesting thing is, it didn't break it thematically, though.
Yeah, it
Right?
didn't.
Like, because it ends up being that, like, yeah, it's the little guys without any names who aren't special who are still going to save the day, and that's cool. And it doesn't break any of the thematic stuff. It also, they deal with that kind of like roguish guy who, like, is he good? Is he bad? Like, what's going to happen? And like, he goes bad, right? Like, which is not how it's supposed to go, right? Like, the Han Solo guy, the kind of skeezy guy, is supposed to come back and be a good guy in the end, and they didn't do
Yeah.
that. And I thought that was great. Um, Here's the thing that I find the most impressive about that film. Rey has an arc, Luke has an arc, Finn has an arc, Poe has an arc, Kylo Ren has an arc. That's 5 characters with full and complete character arcs in a single movie that are all
Yeah.
thematically interlinked, in the sense that they all need to listen to somebody else. 4 of them. 4 of them are interlinked, and the 5th one is more age is interlinked with like the overarching thing. Like Rey's arc is basically about accepting the fact that her parents don't matter, and what matters is what she wants, and accepting that.
Yeah.
Like that's her arc. The other 4 arcs are about basically 4 men who really, really who need to listen and learn something from somebody who's talking to them. And in every case in this story, it's a woman. Luke needs to listen to Rey, right? And be a hero again. Just one more time, right? Poe needs to listen to Leia and Captain Holdo, like figure out how to be a leader, right? Like he needs to listen to them and grow up. Finn needs to listen to Rose and decide that that he can matter and that things are bigger than himself, you know? And Kylo needs to listen to Rey also and let go of his hate and come back. And he doesn't, and that's why he fails and stays a villain, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so one thing that I often think is that this movie gets a ton of hate because it's a movie about men listening to women.
Yeah.
And that pisses me off. It makes me mad that I think a significant amount of dislike for this film comes from the fact that it is oddly feminist. Quietly not on the surface, it doesn't come off that way if you ask me, but it is. And so all these things are interlinked. They all go around the same theme that you're talking about changing the past, letting go, right? And growing. And I think that's incredible. That's incredible writing. It's incredible acting, and yeah, there's some flaws in the execution of the pacing because that's a lot for one goddamn movie to do. But I think it pulls it off really in the end. And I'm sorry, I'm going to keep talking here because I have so many feelings about this movie. But like, I'm going to go back to Luke for a second because, like you were saying, people are like, "This is not the Luke that we got," and I'm sorry, but he's an old man who's made a lot of mistakes in his life, who ran off to a random ass planet, like all of his father figures. Oh my god, that is exactly what he would do. He's a Skywalker. He's an emotional man. Like that's who he is. And to be fair, he let down his students, his family, his best friend, his nephew. right? Like, he has every reason to be in so much pain, to think that he fucked up so bad that he's like, you know what? No, the Jedi need to be done. I need to get the fuck out of here. Like, I clearly this is not working. I think that makes perfect sense. And you know what? People are like, but he's not like a Jedi anymore. But his whole damn arc is realizing that no, I do need to be a hero one more time. And he goes out and does the most fucking Jedi Knight thing that could ever be done, which is he saves the day, lets people escape, lets hope live on without throwing a single actual blow. He tricks everybody into thinking that he's there, and has this a crazy cool duel where he doesn't actually like block any blows, and it's like the most Jedi thing to solve the problem without actually being violent. Like, I thought that was amazing. I thought that was like the Luke you like always dreamed of, and it to me is to like find the hero in you even when it's hard. I don't know.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, right? I think that's that moment, that duel in particular, is what I think the prequels kind of fail to show about the Jedi. And you are right, it is the most Luke thing ever, and you see how much he's grown in that scene. He's not just angry and, using his passion to fight his nephew. He is, he has come to peace with who he is and stuff. And it's a very that scene gives us more about the life he lived and the man he wanted to become than if we saw him like doing backflips, killing people in this movie. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, if he was just a badass killing machine that lived alone, eating porgs, then we wouldn't care. But because we see like a broken hero, real, like you said, realize that he's got to believe one more time. It's great, and it also just sets a great precedent for what the future of Jedi could be.
Right. That's the other thing, is his lessons are that the Jedi as a his lesson is the Jedi as an institution was really broken. And
Yeah,
the idea of me trying to bring it back as it was kind of a mistake. I shouldn't have done that. Then when you temper it against Rey being like, yeah, but like conceptually, the idea of like these magic heroes who can help us, guide us through dark times, that's not a broken concept. We still need that. And so when he's at the end saying like, I'm not the last Jedi, that's a good thing. He's like, yeah,
yeah,
no, I'm the last Jedi like this, right? Like, she's going to be something different, you know? And something that like gave me a little hope early in Rise of Skywalker was the fact that Rey used Force lightning, traditionally a dark side technique, right? Like, where I was like, oh, cool, maybe this is showing that like the being able to tap into these emotions that let you have these other abilities isn't the bad thing. The bad thing is like, letting yourself become a murderer, like a monster,
right.
like
Yeah,
that's
letting
the
you kill
problem.
children.
Yeah, like that's
Yeah,
the problem. It's
yeah,
not the fact that you feel angry. That's not a problem.
right.
Like something that's interesting that is thematic throughout each trilogy is each generation of Jedi is less confined and what's the word?
Restrained.
Restrained and conformist than the last. They're more emotional, more open, and as we see, it lets them go further, different area places, right?
Yeah,
And so, and then the other thing I loved about The Last Jedi is that it basically pulled it just like it was like, here, we're gonna hit all the check boxes on the Return of the Jedi and Empire Strikes Back shit right now. We're just gonna get it out of the way, which leaves the next movie completely open to be something completely new, right? Like, there's no
yeah,
big emperor figure to kill, right? Like at the end, there's like we're at the end of Empire and Return of the Jedi at the same time, and we've also blown up the need for um, legacy. Like, you have to be a Skywalker, you have to be a Kenobi, you have to be something. So it's completely
right.
wide open, and I was like, that's amazing. And I was so
Yeah,
excited. I was like, 9 could be anything. Like,
Exactly.
anything. And that was so exciting to me. Um, and to be fair, what I'll hear from people who have criticisms of it is like, like, yeah, there's some timing flaws in the film. There's, you know, some, there were some disappointments around like mythologizing things, like who was Snoke, and then it was just like, I don't know, some fucking guy. Like he was just some lame guy. Like that's fine. Kylo Ren is a much more interesting villain, anyways. Like
Yeah.
by leaps and bounds, he is so much more interesting. Than some random guy in a gold cloak. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so I think something that is frustrating about the sequel trilogy is that it's a bit of squandered potential in a way.
Yeah.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, like I wonder how people might feel about 8 if 9 stuck to its guns and really gave it some interesting payoff, right?
Yeah.
Like what if they had managed to make the conflict really about Rey and Ben, like Ben Solo? Like what if they'd really managed to do that at the end and make it be this like thing of like, where is the line? Like what makes you a good force user or a bad force user? And it's really blurry, and it actually comes down to your actions, not what color blade you hold, you know.
Yeah.
And then they didn't, you know. They didn't show us like with Poe, you were talking about how in 9 they took away any sort of like arc from him, you know.
He's just kind of there.
Yeah, we never got to see him actually be the leader he worked to be. We never got to see Finn, the real freedom fighter who both understands sacrifice and living to fight another day. You know, we never got to see Rose again, basically, period. You know, like,
Yeah.
I, and I guess this leads me to like one final thing I want to talk about in this one, which is the fandom around
Yeah.
Star Wars. I love Star Wars so much. I know you do too. I don't like being a Star Wars fan.
Yeah. It's not something you can really be proud of, because I don't know. It's hard to be a part of any kind of fandom, just because fandom in and of itself can be so toxic.
Yeah, it really can be. There are rules, there's right and wrong ways to be, you know, any of it. And that's awful.
Yeah. It I don't know, it just kind of it brings you back to high school and cliques and stuff like that, and it's not cool,
No,
It's just it's not cool.
and it's vicious. Like,
Yeah.
but the actress who played Rose, she was like kind of accosted online, you know?
Yeah.
That's awful. That's
Yeah.
truly awful. Because
Mhm.
like I love these movies. They mean a lot to me growing up. But it's a movie. Like you and I love art. We think that I'm speaking for you here, so correct me if I'm wrong. We find a lot of value in it. It matters. Art matters. Like movies matter, TV matters, video games matter to people, and they teach us and they let us connect and share with each other. But it's a movie, and you took it out on a human being, and that's just awful.
Yeah. And that's ultimately like the biggest shadow over this trilogy, right? Is just like the prequels didn't really have that, but this trilogy does. And it's from a very particular pointed angle that you so aptly pointed out earlier, in that, episode 8 is a very feminist movie where men have to listen to women. And of course, you know, it sucks that that Kelly Marie Tran got viciously attacked online. It's
Thank
not
you.
fair, and it's not right, and like that is, I think, the single biggest thing that I think will forever, for me at least, make this trilogy of movies not great, just because of how people reacted to that. And I don't think that that's right. So
No, agreed.
yeah.
All right. Well, one thing I'm gonna end this on one light note.
Okay.
I thought it was rad that Rey had a yellow lightsaber at the end of Rise of Skywalker. I thought that was really cool. I thought that it was awesome that they made that canon again. It's awesome. Anyways, I just want to leave it on something a little fun and a high note, so people come back next week, because I think next week is going to be our like most upbeat, positive, because I think you and I love the extended universe the most.
Yes,
So.
because I think I think that the hard part about Star Wars, right, is that everybody sees themselves in these characters, but the extended universe is where you can actually be a character, and that is probably why it's so good. But that's next week, the final part of Star Wars month. You can, and that's when we'll talk about it. You can catch what movies I'm watching this side of the galaxy on Letterboxd at Benig-Aiello. And Dane, where can we find you and your Starfleet?
You can find me at my secret base on Twitter at Dane_Fogdall. Or you can listen to my encoded messages out to the other Rebel Alliance on Diceology, which is spelled like the science of dice, on iTunes, Stitcher, or Spotify. It's a podcast.
Yeah, a good podcast too. May the force be with you, everybody, and we'll catch you next week.
See you soon.